It's a fashion disaster. Most of our clothes come from petroleum-based fibers, making the apparel business a serious source of greenhouse emissions. That's why designer Charlotte McCurdy created a raincoat made from carbon-negative algae plastic, just one of the new biomaterials that could one day help us cut out the oil.
We are a long way from eliminating fossil fuels from our textile supply chain. Most of our scenarios for staying below 2 degrees centigrade and global average temperatures depend on carbon removal. Those technologies still need to be developed.
That's why Charlotte developed this plastic made from marine macroalgae, a seaweed which she washes and submerges in water. Her process utilizes a biological component of the algae, which she heats and dissolves into the liquid. The rest of the algae is separated out and discarded, leaving only the desired component, which is then molded into flat sheets and cured. From there, it can be cut, sewn, or die-cut for different applications. Algae naturally captures carbon from the water and atmosphere via photosynthesis, and the manufacturing process creates no emissions, resulting in a material whose production would be net carbon negative.
I'm working on the climate impact of the fashion industry, as it's such a good prototype industry for these kind of interconnected problems. And paradigm-shifting innovation has a history of starting in textiles.
In the 1930s, nylon became the first commercially successful synthetic fiber. It was welcomed as a revolutionary material. Nylon replaced silken stockings and boar bristles in toothbrushes. It was used in parachutes for World War II soldiers. And soon it found its way into everything else: carpets, clothing, hoses, and seatbelts.
Real nylon and fully fashioned. Very nice to see again from any angle.
It was part of an explosion in the exploration of polymers. Like nylon, materials such as acrylic, spandex, polyester, and vinyl are all plastics made from petroleum-derived polymers. They're created by joining carbon-containing molecules called monomers into larger chains and networks.
All cloth is made of carbon. Whether it's natural or synthetic, at the molecular level, every textile is just different chains of carbon. But right now, more than half of our textiles are made from carbon that came out of the ground.
Once, synthetic fibers were created as replacements for natural textiles. Now, new bioplastics like Charlotte's are being developed with the hope of one day replacing the petroleum-based materials that conquered the world and are now polluting the hell out of it. Maybe nothing sounds more wholesome than materials made from renewable plants, like sugar or corn, grown by farmers in honest, good old-fashioned dirt. But there's a complicated calculus to consider here. Growing crops on a scale necessary to cover our plastic addiction would require massive amounts of fertilizers, whose production creates large amounts of greenhouse gas emissions, as well as the farm equipment that runs on fossil fuels. To meet our new need for bioplastics, forests and other wild areas have been converted to agricultural use, wiping out the carbon gains of using renewable feedstocks. Some researchers are experimenting with using a range of waste materials to make bioplastics or biofuels, eliminating the need to grow new crops altogether. That includes everything from agricultural waste, like unwanted onions, leftover materials from pressing oils, and even human sewage, captured at wastewater treatment plants. Some researchers are already working on the next step, going from carbon neutral to carbon negative, developing materials that not only reduce or eliminate harm, but actively improve the climate situation.
If we want to be actively removing carbon from the atmosphere as we make textiles, we cannot just be renewably raising crops and planting forests in places that are already rich in biomass.
Which is why Charlotte and others are looking to algae, which are rich in protein and soak up carbon.
There are some textiles breaking onto the market right now that have some percentage of their composition coming from algae. Most of these are 5% or less algae in origin and are essentially conventional fabrics. There's quite a bit of algae washing out there, but I'm not really interested in algae for algae's sake anyway. The goal is to fight climate change. Algae can be a useful tool in that fight.
Charlotte chose a raincoat because what better way to protect against the symptoms of a changing climate? She's made a total of 4 coats now, though she's the only person to have ever worn one, making the algae slicker one of the most exclusive fashion items out there. Wait, can I get one? She says that at this point, the material is also a bit too biodegradable, which might not sound like a problem, though you probably don't want your coat dissolving in a thunderstorm. Although Charlotte has no current plans to commercialize or mass produce a material or raincoat, she's now making biodegradable algae sequins for a dress produced by designer Philip Lim as part of the 1x1 project, which pairs fashion figures with material innovators.
The promise of an emerging technology can feel empty until it's actually in your life. And just as quickly, it can seem inevitable and as essential as the air you breathe.